It was New Hampshire, the kind of place where seasons hit you hard, each one leaving its mark like a brand. This was late autumn, the tail end of the year, and the air had that bite to it, a crispness that promised snow was just around the corner. I was in my early 20s, that confusing age where you're not quite a kid anymore, but adulthood still feels like a costume you haven't quite grown into. I'd just come out of a 2-year relationship, the kind that felt serious at the time, like it was building towards something, but then just dissipated. It left me adrift, a little lost in the woods of my own life, wandering without a compass, searching for something I couldn't even name. My grandfather had passed away a few months prior. He was a pillar in our small town, a decorated veteran, the kind of man everyone knew and respected. His absence was a gaping hole in our community, but especially in my grandmother's life. She was a woman of unwavering faith, the kind that seemed to anchor her to the earth. Every Sunday, rain or shine, she'd attend liturgy, a ritual that was as much a part of her week as breathing. After my grandfather was gone, something shifted in me. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was just a need for something solid in a world that suddenly felt shaky, but I started going to church with her. It wasn't about some sudden religious awakening. Honestly, it was partly to be there for my grandmother. She was lost in her own way, navigating a world suddenly devoid of her partner of 60 years. But it was also for me. I felt like I was floating, untethered, and the quiet solemnity of the church, the ancient words, the sense of community. It offered a kind of grounding I didn't realize I was craving. Grandma, bless her heart, she was grieving deeply, but her faith was like a lighthouse in her storm. She'd tell me, her voice thick with emotion but steady, that she knew he was with the Lord now, finally at peace. And you could see it in her eyes, the genuine comfort it gave her. I envied that, honestly. Faith like that, the kind that wraps you in a blanket of peace, feels rare. It's something people spend lifetimes searching for, even if they never quite articulate it. So, Sunday mornings became our routine. We'd drive to the small, white-clapboard church just outside of town, the bell tolling as we pulled into the gravel parking lot. The air inside was always thick with incense and the hushed reverence of people seeking solace or connection or something more. One particular Sunday, after the service, something unusual happened. It still feels like a dream, a vivid, unsettling fever dream. I was standing with Grandma in the narthex, the sunlight filtering through the stained glass windows, casting colored patterns on the worn wooden floor. We were chatting with Mrs. Henderson about the upcoming bake sale when I saw her. She was across the room, near the back, almost hidden in the shadows. I'd never seen her at church before, which was strange because our community, especially the church community, was small, tight-knit. Everyone knew everyone, or at least recognized faces. But this girl, she was new and striking. Dark curly hair, almost black, cascading around her shoulders like a storm cloud. And her eyes, hazel, but not just any hazel. They were deep, luminous, like pools of amber, flecked with gold and green, drawing you in. She had this quiet intensity about her, a stillness that was captivating. I found myself just watching her. The service ended, people started to mingle, the usual post-church buzz filling the air. Grandma was deep in conversation with Mrs. Henderson about rhubarb pie recipes, so I excused myself, mumbled, just going to say hello to someone new, and started to walk towards her. Part of it was pure, simple attraction. She was beautiful, undeniably so, but there was more to it than that. There was a curiosity, an intrigue. Seeing a new face in our familiar, predictable world felt like a ripple in still water. And there was something about her quiet demeanor, that hint of mystery, that just pulled me in. I approached her, feeling a little awkward, a little bold. "Hi," I said, my voice maybe a bit louder than necessary in the now chatty room. She turned, her gaze meeting mine, those hazel eyes assessing, and a faint smile touched her lips. "Hi," she replied, her voice soft, almost breathy, with a slight, unidentifiable accent, maybe just a different way of speaking than what I was used to. "I don't think I've seen you here before," I ventured, stating the obvious. "No," she said, still smiling faintly. "I'm new." I started, offering my name. "I know," she interrupted gently, a playful glint in her eyes. "You're from around here?" It wasn't a question, more of a knowing statement. It was a little unnerving, but also intriguing. "Right?" I said, a little taken aback. "And you are?" "Kaylee," she offered. Just the name, no last name, no further explanation. It was enough, somehow. We started talking, just small talk at first, the kind you do with anyone new. But quickly, it shifted. There was a spark, that undeniable connection you sometimes feel with someone immediately. It was like a low hum in the air, a shared energy. You know what I mean, that feeling when you meet someone and it's just easy, effortless, like you've known them longer than you actually have. Kaylee had this quiet, almost ethereal charm. She listened intently, her gaze fixed on me, making me feel like I was the only person in the room. And when she spoke, it was with a thoughtful cadence, each word carefully chosen. I found myself drawn in deeper with every passing minute. I tried to steer the conversation towards something more concrete, something to anchor her in my understanding. "So, where are you from originally?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "What brings you to town?" She laughed, a soft, melodic sound. "Oh, you want all my secrets right away," she teased, her eyes twinkling. "You'll have to take me out for those answers." I laughed back, enjoying the playful banter. "Is that an invitation?" "Maybe," she said, her smile widening slightly. "If you're charming enough." "I can be charming," I said, puffing out my chest a little, pretending to be more confident than I felt. She just smiled again, that enigmatic smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, leaving a hint of mystery lingering. I kept gently probing, trying to get more information, but she was skilled at deflecting, turning questions into jokes, keeping me at arm's length while still holding my attention. Finally, after a bit of playful nagging, she relented, giving me a small piece of the puzzle. "My family just moved here," she said, her voice softening a little, losing some of its playful edge. "Recently. And I go to college nearby." That explained why I'd never seen her around before. New in town, a student. It made sense. By the time we wrapped up our conversation, the church was emptying out, people heading home for Sunday lunch. I managed to get her number, a small victory that felt much bigger than it was. I was riding a high, the giddy excitement of meeting someone new, someone interesting, someone different. The next week was a blur of texting. We messaged back and forth pretty frequently, light, flirty exchanges, getting to know each other in that superficial, digital way that's so common now. We exchanged social media handles too. I remember scrolling through her Instagram at one point, surprised to see she had so few followers. It was almost refreshing. The last thing anyone wants, I thought, is to fall for someone who's already living their life in front of an audience. It felt like she was undiscovered, just for me. Stupid, I know, but that's how it felt. She started to open up a little more in our texts, peeling back the layers of that calculated mystique. She hinted at her family situation. Things weren't great, she said. Her stepfather was, in her words, a mess. An alcoholic who made life difficult for her and her mother. And her biological father. That was a darker subject, one she skirted around. She wouldn't give me specifics, just vague allusions to things being bad, complicated. Apparently, they'd moved to New Hampshire to get away from him, a fresh start, a clean break. She'd transferred colleges, leaving behind everything and everyone she knew. I didn't press her about her father. It felt too soon, too intrusive. I was just glad she was opening up at all, letting me see a little more of the real Kaylee beneath the surface. As much as I was intrigued by the mystery, it was nice to feel like I was actually getting to know her on a more personal level. In my excitement, I'd neglected to actually plan a date, but I figured I'd see her at church again the following Sunday. And I did. There she was, in the same spot near the back, that dark hair gleaming in the sunlight, those hazel eyes holding the same quiet intensity. I took it as a sign that this was meant to be, maybe. Corny, I know. After the service, I didn't hesitate. I walked right up to her, my heart doing that nervous little flutter kick thing. "Kaylee," I said, smiling, "about those secrets." She looked up at me, her expression softening into a genuine smile this time. one that did reach her eyes, lighting them up. "Secrets?" she asked, playing coy. "Yeah," I said. "The ones I have to take you out to get." She laughed again, that soft, melodic sound that sent a little shiver down my spine. "Are you asking me on a date? Is it working?" I asked, grinning. She didn't hesitate. She just smiled, a real, warm smile, and said, "Yes." We made plans to meet up later that week. And just like that, it was happening. My first date with Kaylee. The rest of the week was spent in that giddy, anticipatory haze that comes before a first date. I thought about her constantly, replaying our conversations in my head, imagining how the date would go. I was nervous, excited, a little bit terrified. All the usual first date jitters, amplified by the undercurrent of mystery that surrounded Kaylee. When the night finally came, I picked her up, feeling ridiculously self-conscious about my beat-up Volvo, the one my parents were practically waiting to die. But Kaylee didn't seem to notice, or if she did, she didn't care. She slid into the passenger seat, her presence filling the car, and that nervous flutter kick in my chest started up again. We kept things simple for our first date. Dinner and a movie. Nothing fancy, just an easy, low-pressure night where we could talk and get to know each other even more. The movie was some forgettable rom-com, but it didn't matter. I was too focused on Kaylee to really pay attention to the screen. Dinner was at a small, cozy Italian place downtown. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, the low lighting casting soft shadows, making everything feel intimate. In the conversation, it flowed effortlessly. She was a great listener, genuinely interested in what I had to say, asking thoughtful questions, drawing me out, and when she talked, I hung on every word, fascinated by her perspective, her quiet intensity. I honestly thought it was going really well. Really, really well. There was a connection there, a real spark, and I didn't want the night to end. Not yet. After dinner, as we were walking back to the car, I suggested it. "Want to go for a drive?" I asked, trying to sound casual, like it was just a spontaneous idea. "Just a little drive? Get some air?" She looked at me, those hazel eyes considering, and then nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "A drive sounds nice." I was relieved. A drive, I thought, would give us a chance to keep talking, to keep that connection going, without the noise and distractions of a restaurant. So, we got back in the Volvo, and I started driving, heading out of town, towards the highway. We ended up on one of those roads that was technically a highway, but looked more like a normal two-lane road. It wound through the countryside, dark and quiet, trees lining either side, their bare branches reaching up like skeletal fingers against the night sky. It was windy that night, the wind whistling through the trees, creating a kind of eerie, whispering soundtrack to our drive. Everything felt perfect. The quiet road, the dark sky, the wind in the trees, Kaylee beside me, the easy flow of conversation. It's crazy how things can change in an instant, how everything can shift, tilt on its axis, in the blink of an eye. What I'm about to describe to you, it's something I will never be able to purge from my mind. It's etched into my memory, burned in, a scar on my consciousness. We were driving along, talking about something, I don't even remember what, probably some trivial, first date topic. And then, out of nowhere, she started speaking. But it wasn't in English. The words tumbled out of her mouth, fast, mumbled, a torrent of sounds that were completely foreign to me. It sounded like French, maybe, or something close to it, but I wasn't sure. It was just gibberish. Nonsense. At first, I thought she was joking, maybe testing me, seeing if I spoke another language. I chuckled nervously, glancing over at her. "What was that?" I asked, expecting her to laugh, to break the spell. But she didn't laugh. She didn't even seem to hear me. She just kept talking, that rapid, unintelligible stream of words pouring out of her, her voice low, almost guttural. And then I noticed her eyes. They were rolling back, slowly, then faster, until only the whites were visible, stark and unsettling against her dark skin. It was like something was taking over, pulling her eyes back into her head. I swerved the car, instinctively, violently, my hands jerking the wheel. We lurched sideways, tires screeching, narrowly missing the guardrail, the car shuddering violently. My heart slammed against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in my chest. I almost crashed, almost killed us both. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Seizure? Was she having a seizure? But it didn't look like a seizure. It was different. Wrong. I fought to regain control, to pull myself together, to not completely lose it. I wrestled the car back onto the road, my hands shaking, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I pulled over to the shoulder, slamming the gear shift into park, the engine idling roughly, the headlights cutting through the darkness. I turned to her, my heart pounding, my voice trembling. "Kaylee," I whispered, reaching out a hand, then pulling it back, unsure if I should touch her, unsure what was happening. "Kaylee, are you okay?" She didn't respond. She was still talking, that strange, rapid-fire language, her head moving, almost vibrating, a subtle, unsettling tremor. Her eyes were still rolled back, those whites staring blankly upwards. Panic seized me. Cold, clammy, suffocating panic. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip it. I dialed 911, my voice a choked whisper. "Emergency." The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone, calm, professional. I think my girlfriend is having a seizure," I stammered, my voice barely audible. "On Route 101, just outside of town. I don't know what to do." I gave them our location, my voice shaking, trying to stay calm, to sound coherent, even though inside I was falling apart. As I waited, the dispatcher's calm voice a thin thread of sanity in the chaos, I kept checking on her. She was still talking, that alien language, her head still vibrating, her eyes still gone. I didn't know what the hell to do. I wanted to help her, but I was terrified to touch her, terrified of what was happening, terrified of what she was becoming. I had never in my entire life, been more terrified. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it was over. Her voice stopped, just cut off. She snapped her head to look at me, her movements jerky, unnatural, her mouth shut, those strange words ceasing abruptly. She blinked. Her eyes rolled back down, slowly, agonizingly, until they were normal again. Those hazel eyes, but different, wider, wilder, staring at me with an expression I will never, ever forget. Wide-eyed, terrified, like she was seeing a ghost, or becoming one. Before I could say a word, before I could even process what had just happened, she threw open the car door and literally sprinted, full speed, into the woods. I'll say that again. She literally ran into the woods, in the dark, on a windy, cold night, into the dense, shadowy trees that lined the highway. I sat there, frozen, paralyzed, trying to make sense of it, trying to rewind the last few minutes, to understand what I had just witnessed. But my head was spinning, my thoughts a tangled mess. I'm pretty sure my hands were still trembling, even though the immediate terror was starting to recede, replaced by a cold, clammy confusion. I sat in that position, staring at the open car door, at the dark, silent woods beyond, until the flashing blue and red lights appeared in my rearview mirror. Cops, paramedics, salvation, or so I thought. I told them everything, even though it sounded insane, even to my own ears. Every detail, from the strange language to the eyes rolling back to the way she just bolted into the woods. I described that wild, wide-eyed look, the look that would haunt my dreams for months to come. They listened. They nodded. They took my statement. They didn't laugh, didn't dismiss me as some crazy, heartbroken kid. They assured me they'd try their best to find her, to look for her in the woods. I must have looked insane, babbling about seizures and strange languages and girls running into the darkness, but they took me seriously enough. After that night, though, she was just gone, vanished, into thin air. I never saw her again. I went back to church the next Sunday, and the Sunday after that, hoping, praying, to see her, to get some kind of explanation, some kind of closure. But she never showed up. Her Instagram was gone, deleted, like it never existed. She had apparently blocked my number. It was worse than that. I got a friend to text her number, just a casual, "Hey, it's been a while, kind of message, and it bounced back. Number erased. Disconnected. No amount of internet stalking, no frantic online searches ever turned anything up. Kaylee just didn't exist. At least, not online. Not anymore. I even asked people at church, casually, if they knew her, if they'd seen a new girl around. Mrs. Henderson, Father Michael, even the grumpy old usher, Mr. Peterson. No one knew her. No one had seen her. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know where she went. I don't know what that strange episode in the car was, that terrifying moment when she seemed to transform. And I'm not sure I'll ever know. The mystery of Kaylee, the girl who appeared out of nowhere and then vanished just as suddenly, leaving behind only a chilling memory and a lingering sense of unease. It's something that stayed with me, a ghost in the machine of my mind. I don't live in New Hampshire anymore. I moved out west a few years later, chasing a different kind of dream, a different kind of escape. But my memory of home, it's kind of messed up now, tainted by that incident, that night on Route 101. The girl who ran into the woods and disappeared. Sometimes, when the wind blows just right and the trees whisper in a certain way, I can almost hear those strange, foreign words again, echoing in the darkness. And I see those wide, terrified hazel eyes staring back at me from the shadows. That story really leaves you hanging, doesn't it? The disappearance of Kaylee and the strange events on that first date are truly unsettling and make you wonder what in the world was really going on. If you're as captivated and intrigued as I am and desperate to uncover the truth behind Kaylee's mystery, then make sure to smash that like button to show your support. Subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss part 2 where we'll dive deeper into this eerie tale. And most importantly, drop a comment below letting me know your theories and what you think happened to Kaylee. I'm dying to hear your thoughts. Are you ready to unravel this mystery together? Stay tuned for part 2. You definitely won't want to miss it.